Welcome to today's webinar titled Supporting the Bereaved at Home and Downrange. We are thrilled to have Devin Sheehan with us today. Devin Sheehan studied at the University of West Georgia and holds a master's degree in psychology and a specialist degree in guidance and counseling. Over the past 20 years, she has worked with children and adults with a wide range of mental health issues in both outpatient and inpatient settings, and has volunteered as an equine therapist for service members, veterans, and their family. She currently works as the resource coordinator at Military OneSource. Ms. Sheehan is the proud daughter of a former Army National Guard soldier and lives in the National Capital Region with her significant other, an active duty Marine. Without further delay, I will turn things over to Devin Sheehan.
Thank you very much, Stan. And as always, thank you to the members of our audience today for joining us. Before we begin, I do have a brief disclaimer to read to you. The appearance of hyperlinks does not constitute endorsement by the Department of Defense of this website or the information, products, or services contained therein. For other than authorized activities, such as military exchanges and morale, welfare, and recreation sites, the Department of Defense does not exercise any editorial control over the information you may find at these locations. Such links are provided consistent with the stated purpose of this Department of Defense-sponsored webinar. Our objectives today include learning about the nature and stages of grief, ways to assist the bereaved, what to say and what not to say to a bereaved person, and issues for the bereaved who are downrange. Our agenda today includes a brief introduction, the definition of grief, stages of grief and loss, emotional and physical symptoms of grief, survivor's guilt and understanding the effects of that guilt, what to say and what not to say, tips for helping a grieving person, when the bereaved is downrange and when they should seek help, and taking care of yourself. When someone who's close to us, somebody that we love, is experiencing grief, it's very difficult for us to witness and not want to step in, try to fix the problem, make the pain stop. And with grieving, it's a situation where somebody can't do that. They can't just step in, take away the other person's pain, but you can provide comfort and support. And the best thing, obviously, that we can do is listen, make ourselves available to that individual who's experiencing grief and loss. And that's the way that we can step in and do something. So what is grief? Grief is a very strong and sometimes overwhelming emotion for people, whether the sadness is stemming from the loss of a loved one, from a terminal diagnosis that they or somebody else has received. Ultimately, it's a natural reaction to loss. It's both a universal and very personal experience. At some point, everybody is going to experience a loss. They're going to experience that grief. But the way that we process that, so the way that we go through the grieving process, is intensely personal. Nobody does it the same way as another person, and oftentimes we don't even do it the same way twice because there are so many factors that go into the grieving process and what constitutes a loss. In addition to grieving the loss of a loved one, it's also possible to grieve the loss of somebody that you never knew. And while that may sound kind of counterintuitive, we've seen a lot of examples recently in the public where this is true. We've lost, just in 2016, we've lost a lot of well-known individuals, celebrities. We've lost Prince, we've lost David Bowie, and as a result, there are a lot of people who didn't know these individuals on an intimate basis. They weren't connected to them in their daily lives, but there was a connection there based on that celebrity's status what they provided to society, their music or their acting or their political work. And as a result, we feel that connection, we feel that loss. It carries over into the military world as well, whether it's a family member who experiences the loss of their spouse's unit member. They may never have met that person or been with that person, but they feel that shared grief of the loss of a comrade, the loss of a brother or sister in arms. A service member who loses somebody who is deployed with them. Maybe they're in a different unit, but they're in the same area. There's still, once again, that shared loss, even though there wasn't that connection from day to day. These stages of grief and loss have kind of made their way into the public awareness. Most people looking at the list recognize it as the Kubler-Ross stages of grief. And what this was originally designed as was a template. It's certainly just a very basic guideline. We don't expect you're going to go through every one of these steps, and it's going to go step by step by step, and it's going to be this very succinct process. But it was designed as this template for individuals who had received a terminal diagnosis for themselves and the process that they would go through while they were dealing with their grief at this terminal diagnosis. It's expanded to become synonymous with any type of grief and loss. It's certainly expanded well past the original boundaries that were placed on it, and as a result, we look at this as a process that the typical grieving person goes through. Once again, I want to stress that this is not designed to be, let me slap this on you, you've experienced a loss, therefore you're going to go through this step by step, and it's linear, and eventually you're going to come out the other side and have this shared experience. It's not how this is designed to work. You might experience one or two stages and then feel like you have processed the loss. You might go forward, go back a couple steps, go back forward. It's really, as I said at the very beginning, grief is a very personal experience, and nobody can tell you exactly how it's supposed to happen. But let's just take a minute to go through what each of these stages entails. Denial and shock, usually numbness is included in here. This stage protects the individual from experiencing the intensity of the loss. The reason why it's looked at as that first step is because it's useful when the grieving person has to take action, and so their psyche, if you will, their unconscious is stepping up and kind of tamping down a little bit on the intensity so that they can make funeral arrangements, reach out to other family members or friends, loved ones that need to know about the loss. And it's a completely normal reaction to an immediate loss. It should never be confused with a lack of caring or a lack of investment or involvement. And as the individual slowly starts to acknowledge the impact of the loss, then that denial is going to diminish. Anger usually occurs when an individual feels helpless and powerless. Anger comes from that feeling of fear and lack of control. It can stem from a feeling of abandonment through the loved one's death. The individual can be angry at a higher power, at another person, at a group of people, toward life in general. It may not have a specific target. It may just be, I am angry at the universe right now. Bargaining involves persistent thoughts about what could have been done to prevent the loss, to prevent what happened. Children really in particular get into the bargaining stage, and they often get very stuck at this. If I do this, then this will happen. They have that almost magical thinking of being able to impact what's happened. If I had done this, then the loss wouldn't have happened, or if I hadn't thought that, the loss wouldn't have happened. If I was a better husband, wife, child, then this wouldn't have happened. It's a very difficult place for people to get caught up in. And if it's not properly resolved, then a lot of feelings of remorse or feelings of guilt, which you can see is the next stage, really interfere with the healing process. The guilt stage refers to feelings of regret about difficult aspects of the relationship with the deceased, or unresolved feelings from that bargaining stage. So again, you're turning inward. I'm at fault for not doing something or for doing something, or at the same time, I wish that our relationship had been better. Maybe I haven't been talking to my parents as much as I should have been, and now they're not here to talk to anymore. I wish we didn't have that unresolved relationship, that thing hanging over our heads. I wish that we had spent more time together. Depression occurs in some people once they have realized the true extent of the loss. A lot of what we see during the depression stage, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in just a couple slides, sleep and appetite disturbances, lack of energy, crying, those feelings of loneliness, emptiness, and self-pity. Acceptance and hope comes in time, and that timeline is, yet again, I'm going to keep hammering at this point, it's very personal. That timeline cannot be dictated. It's person to person and loss to loss. And it happens when that person has come to terms with the feelings that come with the loss. They've accepted the fact that the loss has occurred. And now they begin to integrate that loss into their life, their set of life experiences. I am now somebody who has lost a parent. I am now somebody who's lost a sibling or a child or a spouse. And now that's a part of me, that will always be a part of me, and now I move forward with that experience and I continue on my path. We'll take just a moment to go over the emotional symptoms of grief, and here's where we see those feelings of sadness and guilt, the yearning of wanting that person back, wanting that person alive again, with us again, being able to share day-to-day things or big events with that person, anger, anxiety, worry, and fear. What's going to happen to me now? What's going to be my future? Feelings of emptiness, self-accusation, again going back to that feeling of guilt, that bargaining. Okay. And preoccupation with the incident, with the loss, the circumstances surrounding the loss, and with the loss itself. Physical symptoms, some of those things that we just mentioned a minute ago, difficulty with sleeping, whether that's you're getting too much sleep or too little sleep, you're waking up in the middle of the night and unable to get back to sleep, you can't focus, you're not remembering things, eating inappropriately, you're not eating, you're eating too much, so that results in weight loss or weight gains, headaches, crying, weakness, fatigue, almost a cold or flu feeling, that those aches and pains, stomach issues, stress-related ailments, as the body is reacting to the stress that is being put on it. Survivor's guilt is something that we see within the military population quite frequently, and of course it also carries over into the civilian population anytime there's a natural disaster or other shared incident where somebody survives and the next person doesn't. So we do see this a lot in service members who are downrange, who are involved in an incident where there's a loss of life. If they've survived and that same event takes somebody else's life, it brings about these feelings of, I didn't do enough to save those other people. I didn't prevent them from being injured or prevent them from being killed. Why did I survive when the other person didn't? They are just as a good of a person. They have a family. They have loved ones, and so do I. But why were they chosen to not make it through? And as a result of these feelings, this survivor's guilt, or really any guilt that goes with grief and loss, it can intensify trauma, and it can intensify the grief. They're playing that situation over and over and over again in their heads. They get very caught up in, what was my role in this? What was somebody else's role in this? What could have happened differently that everybody could have come out of it okay? And it results in really a freezing, an immobilization, mentally, emotionally, and physically. The person is not able to function in their day-to-day life, in their work life, in their home life, within their relationships, and it gets that person stuck in the grief process. They're not able to move through those stages of grief and processing that grief if they're stuck here thinking over and over and over again what could have happened differently. One of the things that we talk about on the counseling side is prolonged grief, which was formerly referred to as complicated grief, and it ties in with this survivor's guilt and with this long-term effects of guilt and getting stuck within the stages of grief. It refers to grieving that lasts longer than a year, and ultimately that grief reaction intensifies to the point where those relationships, those spiritual or religious beliefs, and their work relationships and their ability to be productive is heavily impacted. The loss, the bereaved, is actually experiencing this ongoing yearning or longing for the deceased loved one. About 15% of individuals who have suffered a loss will suffer from complicated grief. And what we see is 1/3 of people who are getting mental health services have been found to suffer from prolonged grief, from this extended grief reaction. So we know it's very common. And what we need to do is recognize the signs and the symptoms, which we'll talk a little bit more about in just a minute. But some of those emotional and physical symptoms we've talked about previously, but also some things we'll talk about coming up. And making sure that we step in, whether it's as a loved one or as a professional, that we can assist that person in getting past some of these feelings. So when we're listening to somebody who is sharing their grief experience and we're supporting them and being there for them, because as we said at the very beginning, we can't fix the situation, but we can certainly be there for the individual. What are some of the things that we can say? We're oftentimes stuck in trying to figure out what to say that doesn't come across as trite, But in fact, whatever you can say that falls kind of into these categories here in front of you are positive things, supportive things, and typically very well received by the person who's grieving. They just want to know that you're there and hearing them. And so some of the things, I'm so sorry. I know that this is a terrible loss for you. You're acknowledging that this is a painful time for them. Acknowledge that you don't know what to say. I don't know what to say, but I want you to know that I care. I care about you, and I care about your well-being, and I'm sorry for this loss. Why don't I come over and make a list of what needs to be done? And I will keep you and your family in my thoughts and prayers. Some things that we want to steer clear of, some things that we might not want to say. I know exactly how you feel. Again, we're going to bring this up again. It's a personal experience. You may have walked a similar path, but the path is not going to look exactly the same. So to say I know exactly how you feel comes across as somewhat dismissive, even though it may be given with the best of intentions. It's God's will. They're in a better place. At least they didn't suffer, or at least they're out of their misery. Think about all of the good things in your life. This is going to bring about I had good things a week ago. I had a great person that I loved, and they were with me, and, there's why did I have to lose this good thing and now only have these good things over here? It's not a comparable situation. You need to get out more. You need to make new friends. You need to go to church. You can't pull somebody along in the process. They will get out when they feel like it's time to get out. They will make new friends when they feel that it's time to make new friends. Some additional tips for helping the bereaved. Once again, accept and acknowledge their feelings. Accept that they're going to be angry. Accept that they're going to be sad. Accept that they're going to be scared. These are emotions that sometimes we're not very comfortable with in other people. We struggle with them in ourselves, and when it comes to somebody else experiencing these things, we're often kind of frozen. We're not sure what to do or what to say, but just by accepting and acknowledging that they're feeling this way and giving them almost a tacit permission. You can feel this way in front of me, and you're not going to scare me. You're not going to drive me away. I'm going to be here for you. Be comfortable with silence. They may not want to talk about it at all. They may not know the words to put it into. And if you can be there in the quiet, in the moment, and just be a supportive presence, that's okay. And at the same time, let them tell their story. They may want to talk about it. They may talk nonstop about it. And you need that sharing, need that constant reminder of who the person was to them and what they meant to them and what their memories of that person are, because they don't want that person to be forgotten. Don't minimize the loss. Every loss is a big loss for somebody. Be patient. Again, that timeline can't be hard stamped. You can't have a calendar up and say, at this point you should be feeling this, and this is what you need to be doing next. Offer to help out, but be specific. A lot of times we say, please let me know if there's anything that I can do, or is there anything that I can do for you? As we said on the previous slide, something like, can I come over and make a list of things that need to be done? Do you need a ride to the grocery store to get food? Can I make dinner for you and bring it over? These very specific things will let the person know that you do want to help out, and it will keep them from having to think about, what needs to be done. In those moments when they're just left foot, right foot, getting it through the day, barely. We don't want to put more pressure on them to think of things. They may not know what needs to be done. And so by coming up with things, specific things that you can offer to help with, this is very supportive on the one hand and very freeing on the other. Keep in contact. Even though the person may withdraw, may not want to have contact, may be in a place where they feel like they just want to be left alone, a simple email or a simple voicemail every now and then will let them know you're still thinking about them, and when they come out that other side and they want contact, you're going to be there for them. Realize that their grief may last a long time. It's a month, it's 6 months, it's a year, it's however long they need to grieve for. Accept that you don't get over the death of somebody that you care about. You just learn to move on. This ties into, well, you'll get over it. Things will be different. We never really get over it. We never get past it. We just accept it. It becomes a part of us, a part of that set life experiences, and we continue on our path with that experience. We carry it with us. Don't worry if you don't know what to say. That's where being able to sit in that silence is a good thing. Let them know their thoughts and feelings are normal. Whatever you are doing, whatever you are thinking, whatever you are experiencing, whatever you're not doing, whatever you're not experiencing, whatever you're not thinking, whatever you're not feeling, all of that is completely normal. And people need to hear that. What you're going through is normal. And continue to provide support after the funeral. That goes back to stay in contact. Just because the memorials are over, the funerals are over, and everybody has gone back to their respective lives doesn't mean that this grieving process stops and that they don't need support anymore. They're going to continue to need that support. So what do we do when the bereaved individual is downrange? Our biggest challenge in these situations is, of course, distance, because we don't have that immediate communication. We're not there to physically comfort the person. We're not able to see them in their day-to-day lives, in their day-to-day existence, and so we don't know. They might be functioning and then all of a sudden they're not functioning, and we're not there to see that. We're not there to know that they're struggling and that it's time that we need to reach out and comfort them. We have that limited ability to tend to that person and tend to their needs, and communication obviously is a hindrance at this point. There's limited availability to speak with the person and be in touch with them in real time. So what can we do? We want to let them know that you're thinking about them every day. You can call, and even if that means leaving a message, you can write letters, you can send cards, emails, text, as often as you can, at least on a daily basis. You want to send a little, I'm thinking about you, and I hope you're okay. I'm thinking about you, and you mean a lot to me, and I'd like to be able to do this for you. And ask if there's anything that you can do from your end. Can you contact the deceased family on that service member's behalf and let them know that that service member is thinking of the family and has that family in their thoughts and their prayers, and that loss means something to that service member? Send flowers for the memorial. Do those things that we as a society normally gather together and normally do, but are so much more difficult when you're half a world away. Listen attentively when you do have that person on the phone. Listen without judgment. Again, anger is going to come across, and there might be things that are being said that wouldn't normally be said on a day-to-day basis, but grief and anger and fear and loss are driving these things, and so we want to listen without judgment and follow the steps, the tips that we just went through for helping the bereaved. Those apply even though there's that distance. Okay, when should the bereaved seek help? We want to encourage them to seek help if they're having difficulty functioning in their day-to-day life. Their grief is impacting their ability to do their job or have relationships or eat or drink, eat or sleep appropriately. Are they using alcohol or drugs to deal with a loss? If they're withdrawing from others, if they are constantly feeling like they're hopeless or they're helpless or nothing is going to make anything better. And particularly if they're talking about death or suicide. How can we take care of ourselves? This is for those of us who are experiencing a loss and those of us who are bereaved and overseas, deployed. Seek balance. You want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself by eating properly, by exercising, by resting when you can, getting that work-life balance as much as you can, depending on your situation. Have a battle buddy. Have somebody with you that you can talk to, that you can lean on, that you can rely on. Accept help and support. Accept that people are going to want to be there for you. Spend time with friends, even in those moments when you don't really want to be with anybody else. Take a moment and really think about, why am I withdrawing? What is driving that? And see if this is a time when actually it would be a good thing for you to be around other people. If you're trying to withdraw because you don't want to embarrass your friends, you don't want them to feel like, oh, I need to take care of this person because they're sad. If you've got those thoughts in your head that you don't want to impose on other people, it's not a time to withdraw. That's a time to reach out, because there are people out there who will support you and who will listen to you. By confiding in those trusted people about your loss, you can get on the path to healing much more easily. And again, don't feel like you can't reach out and get help. If you're overwhelmed, if the stress is really impacting your ability to function, if you've tried coping mechanisms like journaling, expressing your feelings, going to bereavement support groups or talking to other people about your loss, exercising, anything that you've had in the past that has worked as a coping skill and it's not working now, feel free. Don't hesitate to reach out and get help from a chaplain or a pastor, from military and family support centers, Military One Source, behavioral health services, TRICARE. There are a number of resources out there who are specifically there to catch you when you're in this situation, and they just wait. They're there, they're waiting, and they want to help you. Okay. To summarize, grief is a natural response to loss. While there are several stages of grief, they don't follow in a specific order or have a specific timeline. Both those who are downrange and civilians can experience survivor's guilt, where there is a trauma when others are killed. Sometimes just listening and being present is enough. It's important to take care of yourself when you're supporting a bereaved person. And seek help if coping mechanisms don't work and stress is interfering with your ability to function. Stan, do we have any questions from our audience today?
Yes, we do have some questions that have come in. The first question reads, what if your request to help is rejected? Should I give them some time before asking again?
Absolutely. As I touched on earlier, sometimes they just don't know what they need. They might be very overwhelmed, or they might be overwhelmed with so much support that they're good for right now. But what often happens is right after a loss, everybody kind of comes out of the woodwork, and they're there to help and support. But it's those kind of darker days, a couple weeks down the line, a month or two down the line, where things get quiet and they still need help, but they can't reach out. So definitely acknowledge that they don't need help right now, that they've got it covered, but follow back up, keep in contact, and reach back out to them in a couple of weeks, and come up with something specific. Would you like to go out for coffee and talk? Can I take you to the grocery store? Can I run some errands with you? Something specific that they may still need to be doing on a day-to-day basis, but might still be very overwhelming for them.
Great. Next question reads, what can one expect during bereavement counseling?
Well, it really depends on what the loss was, the relationship, because as I touched on kind of early in the presentation, each loss and each relationship kind of drives what the process of grieving is going to look like. The process of grieving for a parent is going to be different from the process of grieving for a child, or the process of grieving for a spouse. Or, even if we look at loss more globally and say a divorce, grieving for a marriage is going to be a different process as well. So what you would typically see, and again, this is just a template, there could be a lot of just emotional support from the perspective of let me hear your story. Let me hear you talk about the person that you've lost, and let's talk about your experience surrounding the loss. Was it a sudden loss? Was it an expected, anticipated loss? Was it a traumatic loss? And, working with those feelings of, how do you feel about the relationship that you had with this person before the loss? Is there something unresolved there that we need to look at? Are there unresolved feelings about the loss itself? For example, my mother has a lot of trauma regarding the loss of her mother because she was making medical decisions for her mother at the time that her mother passed away. And so there's a lot of guilt there. There's a lot of, if I had made a different decision and, she might still be here, well, a counselor would sit with her and talk about, well, let's talk about some of the other decisions that you might have made. Why do you think that things might have been different? Let's talk about your role, what you feel your role was, and, why you might feel that circumstances might have been different, and how much responsibility you have there. And giving you permission to get angry and to feel guilty, and giving you permission to feel those feelings, and then come out the other side with acknowledgement of, what, would the loved one have wanted me to be in this space? Ultimately, you come back to a place of healing and acknowledgement of, what do I want that's most important? Do I want a happy memory of my loved one in our relationship, or do I want to be stuck in this place of always thinking about them in negative terms? So it's a lot of just a supportive environment to allow you to express what you need to express and feel what you need to feel, and then get to a place of healing and hope, whether that's you're seeking that with a chaplain and you come to it spiritually, religiously, or you're going to a secular counselor and you come to it more logically and emotionally.
Thank you. The next question reads, is there assistance with funeral costs available?
There are certainly various options, whether it's life insurance, whether it's Social Security benefits, whether it's military benefits and funeral homes, and if it's a military loss, the VA would be able to go through what the benefits are. Funeral homes in particular are typically very versed in what military benefits can be received that will assist with funeral costs. It's certainly it's expensive, and oftentimes you're in a situation where it's cost prohibitive. So you are looking for that assistance, and your first person to speak with would be the funeral home director. But certainly the VA is there to help, and Military One Source can also assist with locating agencies that can help get funds to be able to pay for funerals.
Okay, thank you. Next question reads, when someone dies close to us, like a mother or father, why does it sometimes affect our relationship with our spouse?
Well, that's an excellent question, and there are many things that would go into answering that. It's the first thing that we want to start off with is grief and loss brings about what I term, it brings about the best and the worst of us. It brings about the best of us because we are experiencing a situation where we are thinking about that loved one in a new light and really having the opportunity to appreciate the role that they played in our lives and the importance that they had within our lives. And at the same time, it brings out the worst of us, those feelings that we don't like to feel, that sadness and that loneliness and that anger and that loss and all of those things that we look at, we're like, oh, those are feelings that I don't want to experience. And it drives us to think things we wouldn't normally think. And as a result, we tend to look at the person who's closest to us and get targeted on them. They are the person who is there, and they're the person who is supportive of us. And sometimes that ends up being the person that we look at and we say, I'm going to act out on you because you're safe. And you're here and you're supporting me, and I know that I can be ugly and angry and frustrated and sad, and you're going to hold me. And it's going to be okay because you're holding me. And all of these things are very subconscious. We're not thinking this in any kind of conscious way. We're reacting. It's a very primal sort of reaction that we're having because grief is just it's an overwhelming emotion. And so typically what's driving it is the safety. But sometimes we also see that reaction coming from fear, from I lost this person that I love and I could lose you too, and I'm really terrified of that happening. And, we do strange things when we're afraid. And so acting out toward that spouse could be one of those things. It's not a conscious thing at all. We're looking at that person and we're just reacting.
Thank you. The next question reads, we talk a lot about emotional support. However, what are some things to do physically to demonstrate support?
Okay. Physical comfort. If the person is comfortable with it, because not all of us are touchy, huggy kinds of people, But, if you know that that's somebody who will accept a physical touch, hugging or just a hand on a shoulder or a hand on the back, that physical touch goes a long way toward comforting somebody. Think of what's the first thing we do for children who are hurt. We pick them up and we hold them. And that carries through all our lives. We crave that physical touch. It's comforting. So certainly that's the number one thing. Let me give you a hug. Let me show you that I am physically present here with you. Little things that you can do physically. I can say, from coming from an Italian family, we like to feed people, and so cooking, because that takes one thing off of the person's list of things to do. Cooking meals that can be frozen and then reheated without any kind of go straight from the freezer to the oven. There you go, we're done. We've got dinner in 30 minutes. So cooking for them, or going grocery shopping, offering to babysit, particularly if the person is needing to go and make funeral arrangements or run other errands, go get benefits, things like that. Those things that people don't want to bring children to because it's just too painful. Offering to take care of the kids, offering to have play dates with your kids and their kids so that they can have some time to themselves. Little things like that, little things that we don't normally think of, can certainly help and are seen as a small thing for us, but a really big thing for them.
Great, thanks. At this time, there are no more questions in the queue, so I would like to thank you, Devin, for sharing your invaluable experience and expertise. I would also like to thank our attendees for participating in today's webinar. And if you find yourself having questions after the webinar is over, please email moswebinars@militaryOneSource.com, and I'll get your question over to Devin, and we'll get an answer back to you as soon as we can. This concludes today's webinar on supporting the bereaved at home and downrange. Thank you all for attending, and have a great day.